this and get over.
Do it.
Let's make it happen. Electrical test 10. We're basically talking about wipers and horns and stuff today. It's really not all that exciting. I will tell you that most of your accessories nowadays are not directly operated by the switch. You know, there's a ton of them that you basically have switches that are making requests to modules, and then the module operates either through internal transistors that directly drive the component, or by way of relays they operate things. But you have to, in order, if you understand the old school way, you can graduate to the new school way. The coolest thing about the newest electronics, when they first started putting electronics on cars, it was a drag because you had no way to communicate with them. Nowadays you can plug a scan tool in and you can go into that box, usually, with the exception of that EVO module on that stupid thing. That doesn't have data stream. All it was a code flasher. You know what I'm saying? And basically on those and on the airbag, you're going to go in there and you're going to flash the code and get to certain points in the test where you tell the module to turn things on and off so that you can see if it's able to turn things on and off, and if it can't raise and lower the car with the airbag system for whatever reason, you're going to have to find out if there's power going to the air spring solenoids and blah blah blah. If you can tell it to do something, then you can go to where it's supposed to be happening and you can see if it's happening there. You'll know if you can determine if you've got a problem with your controller or if you got a problem with your wire harness, and that's where the rubber meets the road. But you have to be able to isolate components and feel where they are.
Actuator tests?
Yeah, whenever you're doing, like for instance, on your actuator test on your little Neon, if you tell it you want to go to 1200 RPM on your two-way talking scan tool, you know, not all scan tools will talk two ways, but only the higher end ones. You tell it to go to 1100 RPM, that's its new target. If it can't hit 1100 RPM, you know something's wrong with the idle air control. You got me? And you can track it down from that point. You can say, okay, I know this thing can't hit its target. The scan tool is not going to tell you what's wrong, but it's going to give you some data that you couldn't get any other way. Now, can I take an oscilloscope and figure out what fuel trim is? Not that I know of. You're going to have to plug into the scan tool and see what it is that's being interpolated by the engine controller. I probably didn't even use that word right. Interpolate's a cool sounding word though when you're talking fast. Okay. The cycling park switch allows the wiper motor to return the wipers to the park position even after the wiper control switch has cut power.
True.
That is true. And how does it work?
I don't know. It just
Okay, you're going to be an engineer now just for 5 minutes. How are you going to make the wipers park?
I'll put it in the park.
Oh,
I'm gonna put,
this is
please.
the one where it's got a contact on the little circle, and when it hits that contact, it knows that it's in park.
Yeah. It
And
basically,
shorts out the motor.
you could actually have a little cam with a bump on, with a dip in it that will close a set of points.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But you can also have a copper strip that's made in a circle so that you've got a contact that's sliding on that and it's got a break in it. And so basically what happens is you're always getting power in a redundant way to that motor through the park circuit. When you turn it off and you kill the rest of the power, that power is still going to be delivered until they go to the park position, and then it finds the break in that little, you see,
stops.
real easy. Now on some of the Crown Vickies, you'll see the wipers. You saw that. Remember when you had to put that wiper motor on that black Crown Victoria? If the wipers are up, it's every time it's a wiper motor. That's good for the parts guy, because if somebody pulls in, you know, out there in front of O'Reilly's with their wipers up, you can say, hey, would you like me to sell you a wiper motor so you can have somebody put it on for you? You know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, because it's a wiper motor every time. If those wipers are up, it's always a wiper motor. There's the park circuit inside screwed up. There's other ways of doing that. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify, but basically all that's going to do is keep power to the motor until they get to the position where they're supposed to stop. The worst thing you can do with wipers, though, and a lot of people don't even think about it, they don't even think about where their little spline posts are when they put the blades on sometimes. You know, that's a big problem. Because like I say, what if the doggone thing, what if they're, you know, in the middle of their travel and you put them somewhere where they can't go, you know, or they go off the edge of the windshield. You always put the wiper arms back on. Now you may want to take them off with them up, but when you put them back on, you better have them parked. You got me? Have them parked when you put them back on, because you need to know where those suckers are when you're putting them on. Don't just pop them on there any kind of way. All right, the tone adjustment screw controls the frequency and current draw of the horn. Now that's true. And who in the world turns a tone adjustment screw, please?
No kidding.
You know, now sometimes what you can whack a horn, whap, you know, with a little screwdriver handle or something, make it work. When it wouldn't, this is the thing, I'm gonna make it real easy for you guys. If my horn don't work, the first thing I'm gonna do is go to the horn and see if I got power and ground to the horn. That ain't complicated, is it?
Nope.
Okay, what's in the most hostile environment and is working the hardest? The dadgum horn. Okay, so usually it's that. So, but let me ask you this, if I see an airbag light and my horn don't work, I'm suspecting a clock spring first. But you can actually go down there and go to your horn. I mean, just forget about everything else everybody says. Go to the horn, power and ground at your horn. You know, you take a little, you know, light bulb, a headlight bulb or something, plug it into those two wires, or if it's just got one wire, hook it up between there and ground, mash the button. If that light comes on, you need a horn. That's the end of the story. That ain't complicated, is it? Easy as dirt. In most horn systems, the relay coil is controlled by several heavy wires which are wrapped around the steering column and grounded to the steering wheel. That is a joke. Basically, I mean, that is not true. The horn is controlled by one tiny little circuit. That's why the reason we have a relay is so we can take a little bitty wire and make something big happen, right? We want to take a little bitty wire, make something big take place.
Well, that sucks. I know what happened to Willie.
What?
His wife's father died.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I did not even know that. I had to send in my condolences. The grounding horn switch completes the relay coil circuit and energizes the horn circuit. In the steering column, when you mash the button to blow the horn, you're providing a ground either through the clock spring or through some sliding contacts that are going down there to the relay. Did you know that not all of them have a horn relay though? Some vehicles actually, the horn button actually directly blows the horn. On some of them. Most of them nowadays have got relays because everybody loves using relays for everything, and I think it's a good deal. This is electrical class. Washer pumps are usually connected to a different circuit from the wiper motors. You think about that? Yeah, well, sort of, because you know you're using a different switch within the wiper assembly thing. Huh?
What number are we on?
5.
What's number 4?
True.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, number 4 was true. Number 5, the answer key says it's false, but I would say that it's true. Now, one day, I mean, I would say that that's the true question. I don't agree with that answer. So you can put either true or false, either one. It don't really matter. It's kind of like fuzzy math, you know. Okay, so one day, think about this. This guy that brought this, he got this Taurus station wagon in there, and whenever he would turn on the wipers, no, when he washed the windshield, the cornering light would come on that side. You know, the cornering light's that white light that shows you the curb when you're turning. You know, it don't flash. It's just on real bright when you turn on the turn signal.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen those?
Yeah.
It's a cornering light. Okay, you haven't seen them. He hasn't seen a cornering light. Well, they kind of got away from cornering lights, but on them high-end cars, they'd have a cornering lights usually, and some of the Tauruses had them. Well, anyway, and when he would turn on the turn signal, the windshield washer would go wing. Or actually, it would, you know, go back and
You know,
forth.
wire crossed?
Yes, there was 2 connectors that were just right there next to one another, and they didn't look exactly alike, but they would plug in a transposed fashion.
Wow.
And this guy was funny to me because whenever something happened that confused him, he would look at me with this deadpan look on his face. You know, because it was like that. Now, anyway, it was just comical. We figured out what was wrong with it pretty quick. Oh, and one day, this is brilliant. We put a cylinder head back on a '89 Camry one time, and after we cranked it up, it was blowing a lot of really good smelling water out the exhaust, and it turned out that somebody had taken the windshield washer hose and put it to a vacuum line on the intake.
Nice.
And it was just sucking that water, just drinking it all out of there. And it was all kind of, this water, I noticed it was blue and had a kind of a pleasant smell to it. That's not antifreeze. You know, there's a lot of it coming out of there, you know. It was just plumb easy to do. Also, on a Toyota, take this to the bank now. You were also in engine performance this semester. The way that they could, you know, a lot of these people, they have a power steering pressure switch that tells them when you're turning the wheel so they'll know to idle the engine up a little bit. Well, the Toyota likes to do that with vacuum. So basically what they do is they've got a switch in the power steering line, and it actually lets vacuum go through whenever you got power steering pressure, and so there's a vacuum line going to it, right? So there's two vacuum lines going to this thing, it's about big around, and if it's easy for those to get unplugged and have a vacuum leak make it idle rough. You know, so think about that. Look down there and see what it ought to idle the car up just a little bit when you're turning the wheel. That's the point. And if it doesn't do that, you got an idea. All right, let's see. In later model cars, wiper control switches are almost always mounted on the dash. They're usually on the stick, on the multifunction switch. And some of those multifunction switches are vastly expensive. Like some of
it's $300.
Yeah, for the Buick.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you can go online and find one from an aftermarket supplier for 110. If you buy it from GM dealer, it's like $500. It's got a wire harness on it about this long. It's a pain to put in, and all that. But it's expensive.
That's okay. I spliced it.
Yeah, you can do that. Well, no, it's not that bad, really. All you got to do is just feed it down through there and plug it in. I mean, that's a lot of wires. Well, let me see. Multiple speed, no washer motor is in most respects a standard. The multiple speed, no washer motor is in most respects a standard 2 or 3 speed motor. Now, these people are thinking GM, because there was a time when the washer pump was built into the wiper motor. And I ain't seen that in years. This is old GM stuff, that particular questionnaire was. And that's true. The resistance test will determine the continuity in a wiper control switch. That's usually true. Some wiper control switches provide a ground to the wiper motor instead of power on some Cadillacs. And sometimes you'll have the contacts in the wiper switch will be, will have an oxidation on them, is what I'm trying to say. And and somebody will say, hey, my wiper switch don't work right, and all this kind of stuff. You say, well, let me try something here. Back and forth with it several times, and it kind of cleans it up. You ever had a radio, a potentiometer for your volume, when you turn it, it makes scratchy noise coming up and down? Well, if you take your fingers and get a hold of that thing and go real fast, a lot of times it'll clean it up. The horn has an oscillating iron core that's pulled back and forth by what?
Magnetic field.
The magnetic field coil. Horn diaphragm is made of what?
One sheet of
Is it made of? It's made of
Big line.
made of metal. The horn diaphragm is made of metal. As a matter of fact, down there in one of them things down there, you'll find a horn that's took apart that you can see. There's a set of 2 horns. That's it right there. Grab that horn. All right, you see that metal diaphragm?
They had that was it.
Yeah, there you go. See that? That's one of them. It's got that little trumpet took off of it.
It vibrates that little metal diaphragm.
It vibrates that little metal diaphragm. And there that one's also got an adjustment screw you can see. See that adjustment screw on that? We're gonna do that right there. We gotta show it on the video here. And the little adjustment screw is actually underneath this thing right here. They really don't, they try to seal it up because this is really sacred territory. We don't want to mess with adjustment on our horn, so we'll cover this up where nobody can get to it. But this is where you would take your horn loose, the wires that plug into it, you'd hook power and ground to those 2 wires. You'd hook and measure for power and ground to those wires when you mesh horn. But that's that metal diaphragm right there. You can hit it like that. And did you know there's a high note and a low note?
No.
There's an A and an F note. Now, some of your Oldsmobiles, like a '69 Oldsmobile, sound like a daggum train because they had three different horn notes. Have you ever heard an old Oldsmobile blow the horn? That's the coolest sounding horn in the world. And I always wanted to get one of those darn things out of a junkyard and put it on my vehicle because it really sounded cool. The horn on the old Oldsmobile did. Some of our people watching my YouTube might remember that. What?
I said, I know my friend has one on his car.
That sounded good, don't it? When you blow that horn, it makes you, man, I wish my diesel truck had a horn like that. It needs one, don't it? All right. Let's see. The resistance test of a horn circuit should reveal that the circuit has what?
High resistance.
Well, what do you think about that?
I don't think that's right.
Low resistance. Low resistance. Low
You
resistance.
need high resistance to make.
No, you don't want high resistance. This thing is kind of doing some work, so it's not going to have. As a matter of fact, if you took your test light, if you put power in one side of this and you touch the other side, like with a grounded test light, you're going to see power going through the horn, and it probably ain't going to make the horn blow. The test light, even the ones that are low impedance we got, will light up usually. The horn, it pulls a little bit of current, yeah. And in a wiper circuit, the function of the intermittent control unit is to do what?
Allow wipers to function when the engine is no, that's not right.
Turn them off and on intermittently.
Immediately.
Yeah. And in a country where you got misty rain and all that kind of stuff, it's always a good idea to have intermittent wipers. Did you ever hear the story about that intermittent wiper stuff? Where it all came from? There is a movie out about that, and if I'm not mistaken, it's called Genius or Ingenious or something like that. And this guy came up with this idea, and he designed it in his garage. It was in the '60s, and or it might have been early 70s, I don't know. But one way or another, he sold it to all the big three in all this. And he owned the patent on it, and he actually sold the idea to them. But it turned into such a popular thing, some kind of a way, he took them all to court because they said they didn't pay him enough for it. And so they awarded him, over this long story short, they awarded him 25 cents
Oh my god.
per car.
Per car?
Per car.
Sweet.
Holy crap.
So every
So
car,
much.
I guess, every car that sold with intermittent wipers on it, they have to give him 25 cents. If you sell 1 million cars, that's $250,000. You know what I'm saying? And there's millions of cars running around. It's about every car you see has got these intermittent wipers on them.
I'll take a quarter per car.
Yeah, 25 cents per car. That's incredible. But there's a movie that's not that old. It's about it's not Stroke of Genius, because that's a Bobby Jones movie. It's a movie that's got something in there in the title of Genius. And the guy's a well-known actor that plays the part. I haven't seen the movie, but I know what it's about. It's kind of like watching a Civil War movie, if you know how it ends. What's it? All right, let's see here. When testing the wiper motor, the technician must use Ohm's law and the resistance from the fuse size. When connected to the wiper motor, the ohm meter should give a reading that is what? Greater than the maximum fuse size for each motor winding.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
well, am I going to do that? No, I'm not going to do that. You can tell if my wiper motor's bad, please. If it's got power and ground to go into it and the darn thing don't work, I'm not worried about that. In the wiper system, the washer uses what?
Internal pump?
Either an internal pump or an external pump. On some of the Jeeps, usually they have two washer pumps one for the front, one for the back windshield if you got a rear washer. If you don't have rear washer, if you do have rear washer on Jeeps though, a lot of times they just reverse the polarity to the motor. If the same motor's got two pumps on it, and one of them pumps in one direction, the other pumps in the other direction, so whenever you put it, wash the back one, it just switches
It's
around.
going backwards.
Cool, yeah, it's cool as all get out. But now a lot of them will have two motors, one for the back, one for the front. Now, one time, this, I shouldn't tell you about jokes I played on people, it's really not good. But anyway, I had this, these Jeep Cherokees, the little thing that the hose goes onto, pop off. It broke off. Like that. Sometimes it would happen. I don't know how it gets broke off, but it gets broke off. And when you go to wash the rear windshield, it just sprays out the back like a water pistol, just straight back, And it's funny to see it happen, And so somebody brought one of those in there, and I went, hey, that's cool. And I said, hey, Terry, come over here. Let's see how. So Terry gets behind it, and I mash the thing, and it sprays him in the chest. And so he comes in there, and he's shaking his finger at me. Another guy did it too. He managed to jump out of the way, It almost got him, but it was funny. It spray farted near that wall. How to do that. But anyway. You could probably, if you could get some kind of a 12-volt washer pump, and you could set it up so that it would squirt some water, and you could put it in a little water gun that had, and put a battery with it, you could make a heck of a water pistol. Now it would empty it quick. It's like the 480 rounds they got in an F-22 Raptor, 100 rounds a second, 5 seconds, and you've expended all your ammo. Boom, it's all in there. All right, so let me see. Horn diaphragm produces sound when? When it's moving, it creates air shock waves. Technician Technician 1 says if the horn does not sound and the fuse in the horn circuit is in good condition, a test light can be used to test the horn circuit.
Yep.
Basically, go to the doggone horn. Technician 2 says a blown fuse in the horn circuit will result from a shorted horn relay. And that is Charlie. Technician 1 says a blown fuse could cause the horn to sound continuously. Please. Technician 2 says a misadjusted horn tone screw could cause the horn to sound continuously. Who's right about it? Nobody's right about that. Those guys are yo-yos. Okay. Yeah. Technician I says if a jumper wire is connected to the battery positive terminal and the horn B plus terminal, the horn should sound. Right?
Yeah.
Technician 2 says if the horn relay can be that the horn relay can be tested by connecting a jumper lead from the switch terminal to the ground. Doing so should allow the horn to sound.
I'd say technician I is
That is a well, what do you think?
I said both.
Yeah, I think technician I is correct on that one too. And the switch terminal to ground? Well, that is really, I need to see a schematic here. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
I don't think it comes with the schematic.
Both those guys are right. Technician I says the negative battery cable should be removed before resistance testing the horn circuit. The words you use are really important. Even whenever you're talking to somebody, if you're talking to a service writer, Little communication issue. Listen to this. Service writer writes me a van up one day. He says, and there's repair lines. Each repair line is a separate thing you're supposed to look at. They don't just write a whole bunch of stuff up on the ticket. Repair number 1 is this. Repair number 2 is this. Like it'll say repair number 1, oil leak. Repair number 2, engine skip. Repair number 3, noise in rear end. And you actually charge your parts out on the repair line that corresponds to that. That's typically the way it works in a dealership, and it's a little different in an independent shop. But the long and the short of it is, the service writer, the warranty ticket is the same way. It's got a different repair line. This is what the current concern you're addressing, this one and this one. So I pick up this ticket and I look at it. That he's Curtis was the service writer, hands it to me. And I said, okay, this says you have to turn on the left turn signal before the engine will start. Well, that's an interesting problem. I've never seen that before. And so, and then I looked at the other two repairs. I said, I'm going to start with this interesting one. So I dug and hunted and I poked around in the dash and I pulled all. I said, wait a minute. Somebody has wired this up this way. This has been modified. Why did they do? Okay, I got to go see Curtis about this. So I got to Curtis and I said, Curtis, I've spent about 30 minutes tracing this down and I found out somebody has changed the way it's wired. And he says, oh, you didn't need to fix that. I just told you so that you know how to start it. Good grief. Why didn't you put a sticky note on it or something instead of putting it on a repair line, Curtis? This is crazy, I used to thought that. One day Curtis came out there. Curtis was a piece of work. He came out there and he says, this guy lost his house playing a game of pool one time. You know that? But anyway, brilliant, outstanding performance. So he came out there one day and he says, hey, this car out here that you're working on, it was a new car, I guess. He really did. It's busted. But is it leaking?
Is it leaking?
What is it?
The box.
He absolutely ruined my box. I can't believe it. My box is ruined.
No, it's not.
Okay. I wondered what that was that he threw on the floor.
I told him he was just going to do it, and then he didn't.
He was trying to interrupt me is what it was, so he figured what I was talking about. So Curtis comes out there and he says, can I get some fuses out of this car here? I said, what? He said, I need three 15-ounce fuses for a customer's car. Can I get 3 of the fuses out of your car that you're working on?
No.
Well, do what you got to do, Curtis. So anyway, I white switched 3 fuses he pulled out. And I went back in the parts room and I says, take 3 15-ounce fuses, give them to me, and charge them out to Curtis. And so anyway, I got those 3 fuses. I put them back where he got them. He came back there with his jaw jutted out. I'm going to pay for my 3 fuses. I said, I know you will. You're stealing parts off the car I'm working on to satisfy some customer. Give me a break. And I could tell you some stories, and I probably will before you're gone from here. All right, now then, we got, let's see if Technician I says the negative battery cable should be removed before resistance testing the horn circuit.
True. True. You always remove the power before you test the resistance.
Yeah, you don't test resistance. You don't usually hook your ohm meter up with power flowing anywhere. Technician 2 says there must be a good connection between the horn switch and the terminal if the test on the switch is to be accurate. Well, duh.
So I'd say they're both right.
Yeah, but horn switch and the terminal if a test of the switch is to be accurate. Some of these questions are worded in a peculiar fashion and all that kind of stuff. And I would say both of those guys are right too. You don't want to resistance test the horn circuit with the battery hooked up. That's obviously true. And obviously you need a good connection if you're going to test the switch. What's up with that? Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go both. Technician I says if the windshield wiper motor stops in the wrong position when the switch is turned off, the linkage between the wiper and the motor may not be fastened properly. Technician 2 says the most likely cause of clattering wiper blades is looseness of the motor crank or other drive parts. That's neither. Those wiper blades don't you just love it when your wiper blades have got hard enough to where they go bouncing on the glass. I hate that. It happens though. If it gets wet, sometimes you can take wiper blades, don't believe it or not, and take you a little bit of alcohol and stuff and Windex and clean them up really good and rejuvenate them a bit. But the parts guy don't like to hear that. He wants to sell some wiper blades. Okay.
I'm going to do that to mine.
All right. See, it's not a bad plan. It don't cost much of anything to do it, there may be spiders out there, though, so be careful.
Hey.
Right. I'm sorry. I thought she was going to go south when that spider was,
Big spiders.
Yeah. What's really bad is when somebody has slapped a spider or a bug away from something, they're looking around for it. If you can catch them looking the other way and just tickle their hand a little,
He tried to do that to me yesterday too.
Actually, I
It worked
smashed a
out.
spider. It looked like he may have been wounded a little bit. I think I killed him, but I said, look, she told me to do that, so if you're still awake, you might want to go after her. But anyway, so, all right, so he wasn't listening though. Let's see. Technician I says if the wiper blades don't park properly when the wiper motor stops, the wiper arm may be set in improper position.
True.
Technician 2 says if the wiper blades do not park properly when the wiper motor is turned off, the park cycling switch could be defective.
True.
That's a Charlie. Technician I says the wiper motor will not, if the wiper motor won't run, the voltage should be checked at the motor. Technician 2 says the wiper arms that are loose on the pivot shaft may slap against the windshield moldings on dry glass.
True.
Now, one of the things that sort of smacks people around, and I got smacked around a few times by it, is when you're in a situation where you're seeing the wipers or something do something, and you look at your wiring schematic and you look at your troubleshooting chart and you think that you find every piece of information you can about those wipers, trying to figure out why it is they're not working the way they're supposed to, nothing addresses your concern. And that's not only with wipers. You'll see that with all kinds of stuff where you're actually digging around trying to figure something out and nothing will actually point you in the direction you need to go. And like for instance, well, some of it is just a no-brainer. Like I was going to tell you about this. My division chair came down here today, Tammy, and she's had this Mercury Mountaineer that her husband drives, and she says our keyless fobs don't work anymore. And so the first thing I asked her, I says, do the buttons on the door work? Like when you punch in, she goes, yeah, we can get in that way. I said, okay, what's that telling me? Why did I ask her that?
Find out if the
I wanted to find out if the
servo
power
was
locks were operative too.
Yeah.
And also, okay, so in a lot of these new ones, this thing right here is actually radio. It's not directly wired, you know?
Really?
Yeah, on the Fords. And it's fairly easy if you've got keyless entry to add those buttons, stick them on there, you know, and just program it. But anyway, I says, okay, so let's look at your battery. So I took her battery out and I stuck it in my tongue and it didn't tickle very much. So I said, let's put your
Do
battery
you
in
have
there.
those?
Yeah, they'll tickle you a bit.
No, I'm serious. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they'll tickle you a little bit. They will. 3 volts, you know, when you got saliva there, it's got some minerals in it. And you know, it's not a good idea to do that with a car battery though, because it'll do a little cooking on your tongue. So I said, okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the key on. I put a battery in it for her first, right? Then I said, now let's try it. Still got nothing. I'm going to turn the key on. On this one, it's 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the door locks go won't, won't. And then I took her fob and I mashed the button. You leave it on the last time. And then you mash the button on the fob and they go won't, won't. And you switch it off and you're done.
But that's
Basically.
just resetting it.
You're basically reprogrammed it to receive the code from the rolling code from that fob, basically.
Huh.
And what was funny about that was Donnie was over one time working on one. He was at the body shop and they called him over to do that on one. He whoop, 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 like that. And then he went to chirp the horn. And not only did the horn chirp on this one, it chirped on the Explorer out in the parking lot. And he went, excuse me? You know? I mean, the code was the same. It just so happened for both of them at that moment, you know. But
That's funny.
now, how many of you guys have ever known of these buttons? Somebody is pushing these buttons really fast on the door and getting the door to unlock. You know what I mean? Like on some of the older ones that had that, these have them 5 buttons, and you could just go crazy pushing the buttons, and after a while they would open up. Well, they changed that by changing it so that if you enter the wrong code 7 times, it stops taking codes for a while. Yeah, so it keeps people from being able to get into that.
That is loud.
One time this guy locked himself out of a Crown Vic. Go back there working in the air conditioning part, and I said, let's see if we can get in. Bup, 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 bup. And it wouldn't work. I said, I guess we can't do that. And he mashed one more button, and it went. Whoop. All right, so here we go. I got to get done with this. Technician I says if a washer pump fails to run, that fails to pump fluid, the wiring should be checked. No, because it's running. Technician 2 says a faulty switch can cause a wiper system to operate intermittently. That would be true. That's B. Technician I says a pinched or leaky hoses can cause the system output to be low.
Yep.
Technician 2 says a defective pump can cause the output system to be low. 24, that's true. And that incidentally, sometimes you'll find jelly and stuff from people mixing different kinds of washer fluid. You know what I'm saying? In the lines. And sometimes you may have to blow backwards through your little sprayers to get all that junk cleared out of them things too. Technician I says a poor ground can cause a windshield washer pump not to run. Technician 2 says a faulty motor can cause a windshield washer system to operate intermittently, and that's a no-brainer, so that concludes this particular electrical test. Everybody's got a clearly defined objective. Lundy, do you want to sink your teeth into figuring out what's in number 7 cylinder on that Crown Vic that